Hi guys! So today we're going to talk about this book here. This is what it looks like, and this is who you can get it from. I recommend Shirley Davis on YouTube. If you don't follow her, give her a follow. She has written quite a few books. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology, and she does amazing work with dissociative identity disorder. And since I'm into the first chapter of this book, I want to read a little bit of it to you so you can understand what she's got in it. So in this part here, she talks a little bit about grooming. Perpetrators of sexual violence use grooming to capture the hearts of their victims. With grooming, the perpetrator ingratiates themselves to help their helpless victim build in trust and intimacy. The perpetrator may shower their intended victim with gifts or simply give the child they are grooming much desired love and attention. During the grooming process, there is normally no access or overt aggression toward the child by the perpetrator. Instead, the child is won over by love bombing, a swift process by which an abuser gains the trust of their victim. After grooming, the child is left helplessly attached to their abuser, and because they are deathly afraid of abandonment, the abuse may continue for years. So in my own childhood, I had dealt with a groomer. My abuse started when I was about 2 or 3, and I didn't know anything about grooming then because nobody tried to groom me. I actually wasn't groomed till between the ages of 9 and 14 with a first-degree sexual assault. If you don't know what that is, that's all the way with a child. And my abuser was my sister's husband. And he did grooming. He would basically say, "You're such a pretty girl." He had a tendency to want to hold me all the time, hang around with me, play basketball with me, things like that. And I would say within the first 2 weeks, the grooming moved quite advancedly to the point where he was touching me in places that weren't appropriate. And we're talking about a man who was in his middle 20s already by then, with a 9-year-old child. So these are things that are important to understand, that these kind of things are not your fault. And groomers are very insistent on getting what they want, and they will do whatever they can to get that. And as you do therapy, you learn to adjust to understand that you were just a child. So next here in Shirley's book, she talks about who are the victims of child sexual abuse. When most people think of someone who sexually abuses children, they often conjure in their minds a stranger leading a child away with candy into a dark corner or snatching them off the playground. The truth of who perpetrated sexual abuse against children is much more malicious. 3 out of 4 adolescents who were sexually abused were perpetrated against by someone the child knows well, an aunt, uncle, mother, or father, to name a few. Sexual abuse can also occur between an older sibling on a younger one. This fact means that 91% of child sexual abuse victims known and trust whomever maltreated them. CDC. So let's talk about that a little bit. I can remember my family having 3 generations back of physical and sexual assault issues. And the reason for this was because they did not know what they were doing was wrong. And as a person that has done a lot of healing in the past 10 years, especially in psychotherapy, it's been a long process. And it's been 20 years of different therapists, different therapies, different treatments, different diagnoses. It has been a nightmare. And to finally stop this pattern is my goal. And to help you to also, learn to make things better for yourself on that as well. Now also here Shirley talks about working with a therapist. Working with a qualified mental health care professional with training in trauma-informed care can significantly enhance the lives of those struggling with the after effects of childhood trauma. It is a long and hard road, but an improved outlook on life is achievable and will happen with a dedicated effort. Some of the mental health disorders listed above, BPD and DID, are severe and will take a long time to conquer. However, survivors can and will overcome the effects of these severe illnesses once they decide they crave gaining a life more than remaining stuck in the trauma of their past. As has already been stated, the effects on the health of an adult who lived through an abusive or neglectful childhood are exceedingly devastating. These effects can include changes in the survivor's mental and physical health. The ACE studies reported another finding that has consequences for millions worldwide. Of the participants studied, the higher the number of ACEs they reported, the more negative health consequences they experienced. This unexpected outcome meant there was a graded dose response in the relationship between the number of ACEs experienced by an individual and the adverse health and well-being across the person's lifespan. All that means is that the more negative experiences a person had in their childhood, the higher the negative health consequences they will experience. So, again, I'm going to repeat, as I have in prior videos and in this video, your health without a trauma healing therapist will decline. You will have health issues. And it seems a lot of people that are on social media, especially TikTok, don't seem to talk about the health issues that come with a dissociative disorder. Your body, because it's in that mode all the time, it's going to regress. It's going to have issues. Blood pressure, body temperature, all changes with switches. It causes the body intense fluctuations that it does not want to deal with. So here in this section that I'm going to read you next, Shirley Davis talks about a pyramid. So I want you to picture yourself a pyramid in your mind, okay? These negative health consequences are understood if you see the ACEs pyramid starting at the bottom with the experiences and going up. One can see the immediate consequences in social, emotional, and cognitive abilities, okay? Concentration on social skills and schoolwork is challenging when you are busy surviving the unthinkable at home. So example, my therapist did intensive investigating on my past, my school records, all that. So we did that together, and we found that there was some inconsistencies in my grade levels, where I was actually held back and then had to be reassessed, and then I scored higher. So it was almost like something malfunctioned there. I either had a switch or something. It just, all of a sudden I'm like retarded in that low level, and then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I'm scoring higher level. Didn't make no sense. So let's move to the next level up on this pyramid. We can see the next phase where, as the child grows, they adopt unhealthy and risky behaviors such as overeating and experiencing drugs, alcohol, and whatnot to numb their pain. So let's talk about that. So as a child, we didn't get candy. We didn't get treats very often. And when we did, we hyperfixated on it and we indulged. So I would, as a child, stuff my face till I was sick. And as an adult, this continued on. Hence, I was very heavy. I weighed about 250 pounds. I had to learn through therapy to control that impulse. My alternative states, my age regress states, had to learn control as well. My therapist, I can remember her talking about working with one of my age regress alters who was 6 years old, who wanted to indulge in sweets. And my therapist would say, nope, only 2. You only get 2 today. That'll be good for you. You don't want to make mommy sick, which is me. And so that was a process. That was a new thing that an age regress alter had to learn. These are things that your therapist, if specializing in trauma, can teach you. Okay, we're going to go up again. In the next stage up on the pyramid, risky behaviors take a toll on the mental health stability and physical health of those who lived through childhood trauma. So, again, I talked about that a little bit before. Let's talk about self-harm. So I have had alternative states that have cut, burned, bruised, and other things that were unhealthy behavior to my body. When I was upset and I disassociate, they felt that was their way of grounding me or helping me. Abusing me was not the answer. So in therapy, my therapist had to give these alternative states a new role, how to handle when they're upset or I'm upset and what to do. So these are techniques that can be taught in therapy for that. And finally, this is the top. The health problems caused by behaviors adopted to deal with childhood ACEs took a toll, and the child, now an adult, can die young, or dies young. The development of dissociative identity disorder and other serious mental health problems. Victims of childhood trauma often find themselves in a conundrum of emotions about their perpetrators. As children, they depend on the people harming them for sustenance and emotional support. So, like me, later in life, this is my own personal experience, when they say health problems later in life, well, you think about it. I used to drink alcohol to deal with the pain. I used to do drugs to deal with the pain. I did things I shouldn't have did. Sexual stuff that I shouldn't have done when I was younger because I didn't know how else to deal with this. I didn't know I had a dissociative disorder, and I'd wake up in places I shouldn't have been and wondering, how did I get here? How do I get home? What did I do? Checking my body for various things to make sure I'm okay. Later down the line, when I had married, I noticed that I had pain in my hands, pain in my feet, throbbing issues of heat and cold, and found out through Dr. Malone that I had fibromyalgia, scored 18 out of 20. Then I had found out I had DIBS, and then I found out I had insomnia and CPTSD. And these symptoms accelerate if you do not seek mental health care healing for your dissociative disorder. So the last part I'm going to read of this book is a little bit about isolation and trust issues, and a little bit about the medical issues that they don't talk about on TikTok with DID. It is not uncommon for people who have met with severe trauma to isolate themselves from others. Often they feel overwhelmed being in the presence of other people and unable to cope with strong emotions. Angry voices and loud noises can be highly triggering and set off those individuals to a fight or flight response. And freeze, but she didn't have that mentioned in here. So isolation is preferred over interacting with others. Unfortunately, these behaviors lead to loneliness and malignant. Now, trust issues. Trusting others involves understanding that they won't harm you. When a person has lived through severe trauma, that belief is destroyed. As a result, many people who have been victims of trauma often are not willing to offer their trust to others for fear that they will be re-victimized. So, that's something I'm still working on. I want to say I think this is the third stage of healing, the healing process I'm into. I basically have gotten through a lot of trauma. I still have some trauma to go through, but I'm more stable than I probably was ever. Okay? Boundaries are set, things like that. The other thing I want to mention is, people that have DID think it's so much fun, or they want to show off their alternative states or dress and cosplay. So the issue I have with that is, why don't you mention if you have DID, as I do and other people that I work with, such as Shirley, liver some plural, all that, we have been through ER visits. I had one year I was in the ER for 16 times for somatic symptoms. And somatic symptoms can be very real. They can cause heart issues, breathing issues, bleeding from places down below that just sporadically happen for no reason at all. It's even the surgeries, I because my body is in a hyperfixated mode all the time, from the switching and the insomnia and the amnesia, my body causes issues like cysts in my body that I've had to have surgeries and removed twice. I had a cyst in my neck and a cyst in my back. I have a prior video showing the cyst in my back that I had to have removed. So I have a fear of ERs. I do not do well in hospitals. So my therapist accompanies me to these doctor visits to make sure that I have the best care that is needed and that I am safe even when I have switching happening or I switch to an alternative state. The other thing that a lot of people with DID go through that they don't talk about on TikTok is reconstructive surgeries to private areas, because sometimes the traumas are so severe that reconstructive surgery is necessary to make sure that those areas function correctly. There's also scar issues that some people get taken care of, even little things like acne and skincare is difficult for people that have trauma because they don't want to take care of themselves. They're so depressed and fear-ridden that even changing clothes is an issue. I know people like me, there are days where they're really good and they're doing things well, and then all of a sudden they crash for 3 days and they're in sweatpants and a t-shirt. And the switching is inevitable. And they don't have time to switch into wigs. And a lot of people that have DID have disabling issues, so to be running around buying clothes and makeup and showing off is not something they're fixated on. They want to get better. They're focused on, okay, why did I get hurt today? Why can't I move today? Why can't I go to the bathroom today? Why can't I use the shower today? These are things that people with real DID deal with on a daily challenge. And I'm going to read this tiny little part here and then we'll be done. And that is repeated search for a rescuer. When a person has not been appropriately mothered and had their basic emotional needs unmet in childhood, they often look for parents as adults. Unfortunately, the only people in adulthood who can mother a person who has lived through severe childhood trauma is themselves. These folks spend excessive time searching for relationships in which they can be cared for and nurtured instead of those where they are equals with their partners. This leaves them vulnerable to destructive relationships and their partners abandoning them due to clinginess and childish behavior. So again, I'm going to bring up Colin Ross's trauma model role and the reparenting role, because if you really want to get better from DID, you have to learn to parent yourself, love yourself, and your alternative states. So basically, you have to become the parent to them age-regressed alters. You have to investigate, why is this child alternative state out? Why are they fixated on this? How can we fix this? And you work with your mental health care professional to get those answers, to get that alternative state better, to connect with you, to cause some people want to just do multiplicity and people like me want to integrate. So those are things that you have to work on, and it could take years to do that, to connect to them, especially if you don't have any awareness. So the idea is to have your therapist or mental health care professional help you to get to know this age regress state. My therapist talks about every session we go through, which my sessions are 4 to 6 hours. At the end of that session, she will tell me what that alternative state has said or did, and we'll work on that. So it's important. So anyway, this is a good book. I'm going to continue to read through the chapters. Shirley Davis is a really great person, and this here, you see this little thing here, this is her YouTube page. And on her YouTube page, you will see learnaboutdid.com. I recommend going into that. She gives great advice. You can also order these books through that. And I still currently am trying to finish her other book, 366, to also do a video on that. So that's all I have today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. And again, you're more than welcome to use this in your mental health care healing and inform your mental health care professional on my tips and books and whatnot. So, loves. Bye.